The Elantra N gets a refresh for the 2024 model year, and it gets some big changes and some small changes that improve the look and also improve the driving experience. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive and see what it's like to drive now, and as well as talking about the fuel economy you can expect and the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And we will go over all those little changes here for the Elantra N for 2024. But as far as the styling goes, that is the one biggest change, arguably, is the new front end and the new back end that you get here on the Elantra. So previously, it was a little bit more of a controversial design, and now we have what I think most people can agree is a much sharper face up front there with the more slender headlights and less of that unpainted black plastic that we had last time. And I think it's a really good look, especially with the little red part there going down the middle, and just a really sharp look up front. You also, coming down to the sides here, get some new 19-inch wheels that look really nice, and you have those red calipers still hiding behind them. And then coming down to the sides, it's all the same there, but going out back, you'll see you have new taillights. You also have a new rear bumper, and I think those really help to enhance the look. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same out back, aside from getting black badging now. You'll see the Hyundai badges and the Elantra badging both being black now to give it a little bit more of a darker, more sporty look as well. And so overall, I think that this is just an absolute improvement in every way on the styling, and I think they did a really good job here on updating the look. The interior of the 2024 Elantra N is basically the same as before. You have a new black Hyundai badge here on the steering wheel, but otherwise it's the same great steering wheel that I adore with these awesome buttons on it and a great 9/3 grip. The seats are still the same as well, but I love, a little bit of perforation. I wish they were perforated all the way through, but outside of that, I mean, they are just really great with the way they hug you in and feel nice and sporty while feeling a little less overboard than like the Civic Type R seats, for example. And then otherwise, all the same basic plasticky interior for the most part. It's an Elantra. You're buying it for the performance, not for a luxury experience. But, that's just worth noting. Some of the others do have nicer materials that this competes with. I also would like to have seen them upgrade the software to the new wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto that you see in other Hyundais for 2024. No such inclusions here, so you still got to plug your phone in for the smartphone integration. Not a big deal. There's, adapters you can use as a workaround if you still want that wireless integration. But otherwise, everything still works really great. I still adore these gauges. They're so fun, and overall this interior still is really cool. You still have a great amount of back seat space. You still have the same perk of the ends having more rear seat space thanks to these seats being thinner than regular Elantra seats. And the trunk space, you also have to keep in mind you're going to have a little bit less space as far as practicality goes if you want to fold the rear seats down, because you have that cross brace there, so that's going to certainly limit your practicality a little bit, but still a nice large trunk nonetheless. But let's start it up and go for a drive. One really cool change for the Elantra N is that you get the new N key. I didn't realize they were doing a new one. It's the same key as other Hyundais, just it's all black instead of the silver you have on the others, and the same goes for the back here. And this one, since it's a little more basic, you just have a couple of buttons there, but I actually really like this key. Very, very cool. But it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, put the clutch in, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. Alright, so setting off here in the Elantra N. So the first thing that you notice about it, I think the first thing that I notice is the very short clutch throw you have in these. You have to really be prepared. It catches the second you start lifting your foot off the floor there. So not a lot of give there, so you got to be very, careful with your, clutch inputs there. But overall, it's a nice light clutch. It's really easy to be smooth with this vehicle though, thankfully, especially since it has auto rev matching. But it's also a nice light flywheel, so even if you want to do it yourself, it's easy to do. And I just find myself being less jerky in this, not being intimately familiar with the clutch catch point than I am with something like a WRX, for example, which has a harder learning curve, and it's just a little bit easier to be smooth here with the Elantra N. You also have still the great visibility you always have in these, really easy as far as that goes. Other things here. So one thing I'm really impressed with for 2024, they did say that they updated the adaptive dampers. So the adaptive suspension here gets new software. And again, I would have to drive this and the old one back to back to truly say, but based on my memory, this feels like in its softest mode, it is a little more comfortable than before, which is great, but you still have all the, breadth of adjustments that you can still do. If you want to have it nice and stiff, you can have that as well. And I love they give you those options. It's great. You have adaptive dampers, and adaptive dampers that actually do something and feel, like there's a noticeable difference there. So that's really great. Also, the steering, they did a bunch of changes to the steering hardware inside to give you better feel, more precision, they say. And those are all, you know, nice improvements as well. Although, again, I would have to really do back-to-back stuff because these are all very minor changes, but the steering is still really great in these. Another thing that I'm noticing is, you know, the shifter. So the shifter, I would say, is average. I like it slightly better than the Volkswagen GTI and GLI's more spring-loaded shifter that they have, where you got to push down to go into reverse for those. It's a little bit odd whenever you're trying to, you know, go through the gears in that. This is great. It's still not as good as a Honda transmission. I still think the SI and especially Type R have much better feeling transmissions than this, but I'd say this is totally fine. I'm totally happy with it. I just was kind of wishing that maybe they would have done a little more work there for 2024 with maybe giving it a little bit more of a mechanical feel, a little more of a metallic feel. It still feels a little plasticky, and I don't love this shift knob feel either, but that's an easy thing to swap if you want. But other things here, so you know, you have a decent amount of road noise. We have the air going here. I'll turn that down a little bit to allow you to hear a little bit more. I mean, you know, again, this is a sporty vehicle, so no one's going to really complain about refinement, but it's been totally fine. I've already been driving this vehicle all week, and I actually really like living with it now. There was one thing, too, that in the past Elantra N, I always struggled to find, like, a good, comfortable driving position, because these seats are so deeply dished that, you know, I've always felt like when I was putting the clutch in, it was always pressing and putting pressure on the underside of my thigh here because of, you know, the edge of that seat coming up so high. But thankfully, I've finally figured out a comfortable driving position where I just had to sit a little closer to the wheel, and then once I did that, then you know, I didn't feel like the seat was holding me back from shifting. You know, again, a very minor complaint, but I felt a little more comfortable here with the suspension, with the seating position, with everything here this time around than I did last time in the Elantra N. I also love the active exhaust you have here in these, which again has a couple different modes, but whenever you start the vehicle up, it defaults to just this normal mode, which is nice and quiet, no crackles and pops. You know, if you don't want to disturb people in your neighborhood or whatever, you know, it's great that it doesn't start in its loudest mode. I'm sure you could probably tweak that if that's something you really wanted to do, but you know, I like that duality, that yes, this is, you know, kind of shouty on the outside with the styling and how aggressive it looks, but at least as far as the exhaust goes, you know, you can have it a little more subtle if that's something you want. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up in the N mode, which does get everything into its most aggressive setting here. There's also N1 and N2 custom mode, so if you want to have, you know, like for example, the suspension soft but have everything else very sporty, you can't have that, and that's what I've been doing most of this week. But we're gonna go in the full-blown N mode here. Let's turn down onto this back road and see how it does. And here we go. Love the crackles and the pops there, and I also love how it animates whenever you change gears, going from like second to third. It, you know, has this like zooming effect, and this whole thing just feels so good. It sounds great too, in my opinion, but we have the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. That is carryover. Powertrain is a carryover completely. So same 276 horsepower, 289 pound-feet of torque. And if you have the dual clutch auto version, there's the NGS, which is no grid shift mode, which gives you overboost for 10 seconds. That will bump that up to 286 horsepower total. But in the manuals here, it's just 276, and it's still a totally fine amount of power. 0 to 60 time, I believe, is like 5.1 seconds or so. I believe it goes down to 4.8 for the dual clutch whenever you're using launch control and all that. You do have launch control still here in the manual, but you know, that's just going to come down to how much clutch abuse you want to do, really. But you know, I think it's a good amount of power. I think it's this real sweet spot that we don't have anywhere else in the sporty enthusiast segment, where you know, you either have stuff like the Type R, everything's, you know, 300 horsepower, GR Corolla, all that, or you have stuff with 200 horsepower like Civic Si. The only other one that's kind of in this middle ground is the Subaru WRX, and that, you know, saddles you with all-wheel drive as well if you go for that one, of course. But I really like the Elantra, and I would say as far as power goes, maybe I'm just getting used to faster vehicles, especially in this electrified era with everything being so quick. This doesn't feel quite as exciting to me as it did whenever I first drove this a couple of years ago. But there was one evening whenever, you know, the temperatures came down, because I'm reviewing this here in the summer, where the temperatures were a little cooler at night, get closer to that boost weather kind of, you know, temperature, where this did feel a little bit stronger. So it still was very fun. I think also just with all these, you know, again, 300 horsepower hot hatches we've had come out in the past couple of years, you know, the Elantra N just feels a little less punchy than those for sure, but still a ton of fun. And especially if you're someone who likes to wring out engines and you don't, you know, you're not afraid of redlining, you can really work this, I'd say, a little bit harder because it has a little less power. You can roll through the gears and you know, get a little more of that engagement and excitement that you might be looking for without going quite as fast and, you know, quite as far over the speed limit as you might in some of those higher performing competitors. But coming up some corners here, I always take, and let's see how the Elantra N handles. So another big improvement for 2024 here is that you have these new wheels are now forged, which is actually a huge improvement. They say it drops 33 pounds of unsprung weight off the vehicle, which is really notable. I mean, that unsprung weight is, you know, one of the biggest killers. If you have less of that, that is really a nice benefit. And so as a result, I mean, this is super flat and feels really good. Now, they didn't list any new curb weight for these. These were right under 3,200 pounds before. If nothing else from the new styling and the other new tweaks didn't add on extra weight, then I would assume that, you know, you can say this is 33 pounds lighter than before. So we'd be at, like, I think 3166 technically for the curb weight here. Regardless, it just feels so light and also so planted and, you know, so grippy, because we have these 245 wide Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires. And it's also the Hyundai N specific calibration of that tire and their specific formulation. So it's going to give you really fantastic handling, and the grip is really good too. And one of the things that I actually really appreciated too was that they have now reinforced the engine mounts, which apparently was part of why, if you watched my week with the Elantra N last time, a couple of years ago, that it really had a lot of vibrations. I mean, the whole front end was like violently vibrating, you know, under wheel spin there, and it was really harsh. And with these changes, I think that was one of the main things they were targeting. And I actually was able to do an acceleration in the wet one time this week. And I mean, again, it was not the exact same road, so it's hard to say 100%, but it was very similar conditions the last time, and it still did that same vibration, but only did it twice. It was just like, duh, duh, and then it gripped, instead of before it was like, duh, 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 and then it was going, and it was like this really kind of concerning kind of sound and feel. So it's not completely gone in my experience, but it is improved. Make of that what you will, but you know, to me it's a nice improvement nonetheless. And you know, they did a bunch of other stuff too, as far as like there's new ducting in the front of this new bumper here to give you better cooling for the radiator and also for the brakes, so you're supposed to have better brake cooling. They also said that there's new brake lines, I believe, that are better thermally insulated, so you'll have better brake performance at the track whenever you are really pushing this as far as the heat goes. And so yeah, I mean, even in the full-blown N mode for the suspension here, I mean, it's firm and you feel the bumps more for sure, but it's still really not too bad. And yeah, they do such a great job with these. I love that you get some of these really advanced things like the adaptive dampers that you don't get in the Civic Si or the WRX unless you go up to these really expensive you know, versions. It's really great that a vehicle in the mid-30s has adaptive dampers, active exhaust, which is something the WRX still doesn't bother to offer. Civic Si doesn't either. You know, it just, this car is so much more customizable than all of the competitors are, and I love that about this. And you know, you're gonna have to spend over 40 grand, well over 40 grand for stuff like a Type R, GR Corolla, things like that, if you want to have a comparable level of customization to your driving experience. But I mean, this even, I think, goes one step beyond any of those, because like, for example, in this N mode, which gives you all kinds of cool graphics and data here, you know, you can also go in and adjust the performance options. So there's like this shift light, there's also this active sound design thing. I have it on the moderate change right now, which is going to give you, you know, a good bit of sound here, but not be overboard. There's also the largest change, which turns it up the most. But I'm going to just do a couple little accelerations here in the various different modes you can pick, and you can hear all the different sounds. So I'm going to put it up into the largest change setting, so it's the loudest it can possibly be, and we're going to go through. I was in Sporty, so you've already heard that one, but there's also High Performance, TCR, and Rally. And I believe the Rally one is a new one, because I don't believe that one was available whenever I reviewed these a couple years ago. It was just TCR and High Performance. But let's try out this Rally one first and see how that sounds. And here we go. So there's that, and there's the TCR one. You can try that one out here. It's definitely subtle. I remember this being a lot more pronounced before, but for this one here, it's yeah, seems to be pretty mild. You can also go in and do custom sound settings and even tweak things beyond that yourself if you'd like. And then we'll go to the High Performance one here. which gives it a little bit more of a bassy kind of throaty sound, I'd say. They're all pretty mild. I mean, it's just a fun thing to, you know, probably set and forget. Pick the one that you like the most and go from there. But, you know, it's just nice that you do have all these little changes here if you want them. Those are the types of things you don't get in the others, and these are maybe gimmicks to some people, wastes of time, maybe to other people that don't appreciate that stuff. But to me, you know, it's all about customizing the experience, and you get all this stuff for free packaged in here without having to go to the aftermarket to tweak things. And to me, it gives you, again, the best of all the worlds. You can have it crazy as far as the sound or the suspension or whatever whenever you're in the mood for it, and when you're not, you know, you can have it, you know, be pretty sedate and, you know, nice and relaxed. But yeah, I mean, overall, this thing, yeah, it puts down power really well. I mean, especially in the dry here, but I think it does put down power a little better than it used to before. You still do have the end corner carving limited slip differential that does a really good job. We'll test that out on a couple of the tighter corners here that are more understeer provoking and see how it does there. But I mean, this thing just handles so well, and I don't even feel like I'm approaching the limits most of the time. And because this is a little more aggressive with its setup, I mean, the rear cross brace and all that stuff, you know, it certainly feels a step above stuff like an SI, a WRX, things like that to me, and, you know, gives you that extra edge that you might be looking for, that extra excitement that you don't really get in those vehicles. This time we can try an acceleration here with the wheel turned. Yeah, see, it's hanging on really well there, and yeah. And I do love the crackles and pops too, because that's something else that you don't really get with any of the competitors that you get here with this, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, this motor feels so good, those up RPMs. But anyway, here's some more tight corners. Let's see if we can provoke this thing to have any kind of unpleasant tendencies. That was loud. Man, that is really, okay, yeah, over $4,000. You get the loudest crackles and pops there. Alright, this is the corner that always initiates understeer in other vehicles that are less advanced, but this one, yeah, it's no sweat. It is really so good. Another vehicle that I haven't mentioned yet is the Volkswagen Jetta GLI and also the GTI, and you know, those also feel less dynamic. I mean, they're very buttoned down, they feel very composed, but you don't have the sense of fun like you have here in this. And I'd say especially in the GLI's case, it's a little less composed, and I think it's a little sloppier feeling, honestly, even with the adaptive dampers. Compared with this, you're also sitting up a little higher in that. It just feels less sporty overall. And so the Elantra is still just this fantastic little bargain of a car that is, I think, more dynamic than all of its competitors whenever you consider the price. And it's just the most fun per dollar, I think, in the compact sedan segment here. I also really love the brake feel. You get some nice bite right towards the top of the pedal, but it's not so grabby that it's hard to be smooth with. I'm able to be totally smooth in normal sedate driving, but then, you know, they're right there. If you just lean a little more on the brakes, I mean, it'll clamp down and feels really nice and strong with these end brakes. And so they did a great job with that as well, and I think the extra cooling will certainly be nice for those that do track these, but even if you're not doing that, then they still just feel great. Two other little changes they made for 2024 are that you now have new ESC software as far as just the tune of it, so I think it's a little less invasive than it was before and a little more intelligent, which is great. You also have new rear suspension bushings, which potentially could also help with handling a little bit. Again, these are minor changes that you'd really have to probably track both cars back to back to appreciate. But, you know, nice that they are, you know, really going through everything in this vehicle and making little changes they think are worth making to improve this experience, and just really shows how hard the N team, I think, is working on this car. And now we're out on the highway here in the Elantra N, and, you know, on this road currently, it's not too bad as far as the road noise here. And just gonna be a really nice highway cruiser. But it is worth noting one important thing is that unlike other Elantras that get adaptive cruise control as standard, there is no adaptive cruise control here in the N version. I'm guessing they just didn't want to put the sensor in the front bumper there for cooling reasons or whatever. But as a result, you do have lane keeping assist, so it is still trying to do the steering assist, and you have regular cruise control, but no adaptive cruise in the N version here. But otherwise, it gives you all the other safety tech as standard, which is great. Means blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alerts, automatic emergency braking, all those things it still does have. And you know, so it's great. You have all the other stuff covered. Just no adaptive cruise, but I think, you know, that's not a big deal, honestly. And, you know, that is one thing that stuff like the SI and others still do offer. As far as fuel economy goes here in the Elantra N, they're rated at 21 mpg in the city, 29 on the highway, and 24 combined. And in my driving, I'm actually kind of impressed. I'm getting 21 mpg exactly, and that's including a little bit of idling to film a little bit of this interior, you know, and the heat here, having the air conditioning going and stuff. But, you know, typically I get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating whenever I review vehicles for a week like this. And also, you know, I was getting on this thing and enjoying it and having a good time in it, getting into that boost and all that. And so that, to me, tells me that this could potentially overperform its fuel economy estimates. And by the way, it's also worth noting, if you go for the dual clutch version of this, you will lose between 1 to 2 mpg in each of the metrics there. But yeah, I mean, I'd say this, you know, is pretty decent for the kind of performance and fun you get here in this. And yeah, I think that over a longer period of time, you may actually be able to overperform what those numbers state. And then the last thing to mention here is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And that is another case where this is basically just beating everybody. It, like, nothing offers what the Elantra N does for anything remotely close to this price tag. So this manual transmission one has no options, by the way, on any of these. It's just basically pick your color, pick your transmission, and you're done. So this one, as tested, is $34,850. So under $35,000 still, in these crazy times of inflation and all that, where every car is, you know, more expensive than we're used to. This still, they retain that price point of, you know, under 35 grand. If you go for the dual clutch version, that is 1,500 bucks more, so that puts you, you know, closer to 36 and a half. But even still, I mean, also you get with the dual clutch not only just the transmission, but you get a moonroof, which you still unfortunately can't get here with the manual. It's a shame because that's a strange thing. I guess it just helps with the simplicity of building them or something. I don't know. But I'd like to see a moonroof option here in the manual too. But regardless, it's just a really good value, because the only one that undercuts this is really the Volkswagen GTI, which starts about $33,000. There's also the refreshed GLI for 2025 coming here. As of the time of me filming this now, I don't have updated pricing for those, so I'm not going to be able to weigh in on the value of the GLI compared to this. But GTI and GLI still do, you know, a few dozen less horsepower than this does. And again, the GTI, even for its base version, gives you a little bit less equipment than you have here in this as well. And it still only undercuts it by, you know, less than $2,000. And it's just not as dynamic. It's not as fun. You don't have the active exhaust. You don't get the adaptive dampers in that base one. If you want a comparable GTI, which, by the way, isn't going to be offered with a manual after 2024. And even in 2024, you got to get a special 380 edition in order to get the manual. But you know, even still, if you want the adaptive dampers and stuff, you're going to be paying more money than this. And again, you still don't get the active exhaust. You still don't get all the other customization. And I will say that, you know, the Volkswagen interior, you know, now that they've gotten rid of all the buttons, isn't really much of an upgrade over this interior as well, honestly. Maybe slightly better, but, you know, not by much in my opinion. And so GTI and GLI just right now don't seem very competitive because their fully loaded versions get up to $40,000, you know, $5 grand more than this. Another competitor, Subaru WRX, does potentially start less. You can get those for, you know, just over $30,000 for the base version, which again gives you way less stuff than this has. If you want a comparable one with Alcantara seats like this has, now the WRX in its top version will give you a moonroof, but otherwise, you know, if you want all the same stuff that you get in this in a WRX, you're going to be paying about $40,000 there as well, and you still don't get adaptive dampers. To get adaptive dampers, you're going to have to go for either the GT version, which is automatic only with a CVT, or you can go for the new TS version here for 2025 that's going to give you adaptive dampers, and that's certainly going to be well into the mid 40s. So to me, WRX only is interesting if you really need all-wheel drive. Otherwise, easily, I would pick Elantra N over the WRX. And this just feels more dynamic. Again, it's easier with the transmission. It's a little smoother. You have the auto rev matching. Again, the adaptive dampers, you know, the active exhaust. Just so many things you don't get in the WRX that make this a clear winner over the WRX. I could have done a full comparison video, but cliff notes here. You know, I don't think there's much comparison. I think this just, unless you need that all-wheel drive, there's no comparison. This is, I would hands down rather have this over a WRX all day, every day. easy decision in my mind. And then, you know, while we're mentioning stuff in the mid $40,000 range, I mean, that's the only other stuff is, you know, stuff like a GR Corolla, which is all-wheel drive, and, you know, it gives you less stuff again, even at that $40,000 price tag, but does give you more performance. And I'd say the GR Corolla is certainly a little more fun than this, although it doesn't have the fun exhaust. But outside of that, I do prefer the GR Corolla driving experience a little bit more. But again, you're paying $5,000 more for that. If that's, you know, worth the upcharge to you, go for it. But I think that, again, this is still very similar amounts of fun for a good bit less money. Civic Type R isn't really a competitor because it's, you know, 45, 46 if you can even get one at MSRP. And so that to me isn't really a great competitor either, because this is, you know, $11,000 cheaper than that at this point. And then, you know, Civic Si is just so much slower, you know, 200 horsepower on that. And I mean, I'll say the Civic interior is certainly a little bit nicer, but this still even matches, like, this has the Bose stereo that also has. I mean, it's a different kind of Bose stereo, but, you know, same branded Bose upgrade for the stereo and stuff, which this one sounds great. They do a really good job here in the Elantras with that. But, you know, SIs are still $30,000 for way less power and performance. No adaptive dampers anymore in the SI. Cloth seats and, you know, again, a slightly nicer interior, but just so much less performance. You know, smaller brakes. I can go on and on all day. But SI is just a way lesser performing vehicle and just not as good of a value. I would just much rather spend another $5,000 for this if you want that extra performance over the SI. And now if you don't care, you know, it's fun that SI is sporty and still, you know, has its own niche that is fun. I really appreciate the SI. I'd happily own one of those as well. But, you know, if you got the extra cash, I'd definitely say this is a lot more fun for just $5,000 more. And so that's why there really is no direct competitor to this still, honestly. Everything's either more expensive, it's a worse value, or it's slower, or a combination of the three. So honestly too, 276 horsepower versus 300. Yes, the Civic Type R, GR Corolla, and those, you know, do feel a little stronger for sure. But this is still so fun. And I think it's enough performance, enough fun for sure that this is really the sweet spot, I think. And, you know, I think there's a lot of demand, a lot of love for these, but I think there could be even more still. You know, we've had all the new hot hatches come out in the past couple of years that have kind of stolen the limelight away from the Elantra N, but I hope that the Elantra N gets its limelight back and people appreciate the amazing value this car is in a time where there's not a lot of great values, relatively speaking, with just everything being so much more expensive than, again, people are used to. So yeah, so much fun for $35,000. So glad that Hyundai didn't, you know, jack the prices of these up super high or anything. And just a really fun little car. I'd happily own one of these. They are just fantastic. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the Elantra N. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Hyundai for providing me here at the Elantra N to review for you guys today. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.